I worked with all sorts of different people throughout my 4 years in fast food, but most of those people all had one thing in common, and that was that most of my coworkers were rejects in society. They were addicts, they were convicted felons, obese. A lot of them were just plain unattractive to the degree where it would actually be a significant hindrance on their ability to thrive and lock down gainful employment. And there was also some good, hardworking people there that just never managed to move beyond the level of minimum wage, maybe because they were just born into poverty and they had all the cards stacked against them, or maybe they were neurodivergent. I mean, one guy I worked with literally had a traumatic brain injury from a four-wheeler accident. I don't know what he was like before the brain injury, but when I knew him, he was clearly very low IQ, and he was one of those kind of wannabe weapons expert guys, sort of a mall ninja type. He had a speech impediment from his head trauma where he had a lisp and he talked really slow, and he would just talk about different kinds of combat knives and stuff all day. But yeah, most of the people I met at that place, they were rejects. Not always due to their own fault. I'm not saying that as an insult. They just were. They were rejects. But then I also worked with a few young, attractive women. It was really interesting seeing the social dynamics there because you'd have a team working there some days that would be like one ex-convict alcoholic, a methed out single mother with neck tattoos, a sub-5 autistic guy in his late 20s that still lived in his mom's basement, and then there'd also be a conventionally attractive 17-year-old girl working part-time as a cashier. And just the difference in how some of the girls there got treated compared to the rest of us, it was really eye-opening. And of course, all the guys that worked there were constantly simping over these girls. You'd have like a 32-year-old lifelong resident of government housing just following some teenage girl around the kitchen everywhere she went, trying to spit game and like offering to do things for her, like do her job for her. It was really pathetic, to say the least. Like, I remember this one bald guy that I don't really know what his deal was, but he was probably about 30 years old. And I know he lived with his mom. His mom actually got him the job because she was friends with our GM, I guess. I think the guy was just some kind of addict, but I'm really not sure. But this guy was working there when the original general manager got demoted, and then we got another GM, and the new GM immediately began hiring a lot of high school girls and recently graduated girls. Before that, the slop factory was just full of losers, pretty much. It was just a sub-5 showcase. But yeah, the first girl that got hired there, she was 17 when she got hired, because I remember she talked about her 18th birthday coming up. But she was pretty hot. I remember I always looked forward to coming into work when I saw her name on the schedule, because it was like, at that point in my life, that was before I went back to school. I was 20 years old. I had been out of high school for a little while, and I was working at this burger slop factory that was like a magnet for all of the ugliest specimens humanity has to offer. So I hardly even ever saw girls around my age at the time, especially not ones that were actually attractive. So it was just like, I mean, I'm sure you all know how it is where it's like just being around an attractive female, it does something to you hormonally, especially when you're still young and full of hope like I was at that time. It just makes you feel motivated. It makes you feel good. It's almost like getting a nice caffeine buzz. It's like somebody turned up the saturation meter on the world. Like all of a sudden the world is in full color again. I think a lot of people don't realize just how much power young, attractive females have. A young, attractive female is just as powerful as a wealthy old man. The type of influence they have is different, sure, but yeah, that's just how it is. So I would work with this girl pretty often, and the other guy would be there too, the bald guy that still lived with his mom. And by the way, for anyone that's new to the channel, I am currently a bald 30-something-year-old man living with my mom, so I'm certainly not any better than this guy. I'm not trying to talk shit about him. I'm just speaking about things factually as they are, or as they were, I guess, because this was a long time ago. But this guy was very much a bald sub-5 loser, just as I currently also am a bald sub-5 loser. But back then, I wasn't sub-5, I don't think. I might have been starting to show the early signs of balding, but we had to wear hats at this job as part of the uniform, so that helped me out a lot. So from this girl's perspective, I might have actually been above average. But as soon as this girl started working there, she immediately became the star of the show. Every single guy there was simping for her. Dudes were offering to do her job for her, take the trash out for her, wipe down tables for her, everything. Even this one manager that I actually thought he might be gay at first. Plus, he was like 35 years old at the time. At least, he may have been older than that. He wasn't like hitting on her or anything, but he just treated her different. He acted all nervous around her, like he was always stumbling over his words and everything, when usually he was a pretty well-spoken guy. And he would let her get free milkshakes, or I think he was actually buying her these milkshakes because he could have easily just used his 100% discount for it because he was a salaried manager, so he did have that full discount. He wasn't supposed to use it for anyone other than himself, but he easily could have gotten away with it. But he was just a very by-the-books kind of guy, so I'm pretty sure he was actually paying for these shakes. I only saw him give her a milkshake on 2 separate occasions, but I know there was other times. I don't know how many other times, but I know there was other times because she told me about it. But the times I saw, it was like we would get a little rush, and then after everything died down, he would be like, "Wow, Ashley, you did an amazing job. You really handled that well. Why don't you have a milkshake on me?" I'll just call her Ashley from here on out because it's easier. So I saw that happen twice, where he gave her a free milkshake as a reward for doing a good job. And I never saw this guy offer anybody else a milkshake or any other kind of reward. So it was obvious he was just simping for Ashley because, I was there too. On the 2 times I witnessed, I was also there, and I remember thinking, Ashley did do a fine job at those times, so props to her, great, but so did I. I did a good job too, so where's my freaking milkshake? Oh, that's right. I'm not a young, attractive female, so I don't get shit. But yeah, I remember one time we were talking about which managers we liked working with the most, and she said she liked that guy because he always gives us free milkshakes. And I remember she said it just like that, like, Paul's the best because he always gives us free milkshakes when we do a good job. And I was just like, he only does that for you, right? And she acted like she didn't believe me, but I asked her if she ever saw him give anyone else a milkshake, and she was like, oh, well, I guess not. But yeah, let me back up a little bit. Okay, so I guess I already revealed that me and this girl would actually talk to each other at work, which, if you know anything about me, that might be kind of surprising. I have really bad social anxiety to the point it's basic. It is a disorder, I would say. Like, I actually have social anxiety disorder, not diagnosed, but, I don't need a professional to tell me about myself, So I have crippling severe social anxiety. I have had it pretty much my whole life, as far back as I can remember. It's really hard for me to even say much of anything around most people usually. And it was like that around this girl at first. It was just, I was my usual self. But there's a couple reasons, I think, why I did end up feeling more open around her than I've felt with like 99% of people I've ever met. So the first thing is, when I was working at that place, that was actually the period of my life when I had the best social skills, mostly just due to the fact that I was a little bit less anxious back then. And that was because I was working this job where I had to talk to customers all day, every day. So it was kind of like exposure therapy, I guess. Although for me, I would still say exposure therapy doesn't really work for me. And that's something that I know because of this experience. It was like I would have my regular extreme crippling social anxiety every single time I worked there for the first 2 or 3 orders, working as a cashier. And then it would slowly wear down a little bit over time as I kept having to interact with more and more people. But it never lasted, right? Like I would always return to my baseline level of anxiety after about 48 hours or so. So if I worked like 4 days in a row, the effect would last a little bit. So like by the 3rd day, I would be starting out at a slightly less anxious baseline. But anytime I had a day off, or especially 2 or more days off in a row, I would be all the way back to square one. I would be back to my regular baseline level of anxiety. So basically, talking to customers all day did improve my social anxiety, but the effect completely wore off, and it wore off super quickly. So the whole exposure therapy thing, I don't think it's a good long-term solution, just speaking for myself. But yeah, anyways, so there was that. And also, the second time I worked with this girl, my manager had me training her. So being in that situation where I was expected to be talking to her, that made it a lot easier for me to talk to her openly because, a big part of social anxiety, at least for me, is just that I'm always worried about what people think about me. I'm afraid to go against people's expectations. And I don't know. I overanalyze everything and I end up just afraid to even say anything at all. So because I was training this girl, it took a mental load off of me because I knew that she expected me to be talking to her, and I also knew exactly what I was supposed to be talking about. And it was mostly talking one-on-one, which is always easier than if there's other people around, because then I have to worry about what all those other people think about me too. So that made it so there wasn't really any room for me to overanalyze what I was saying. I knew exactly what I was supposed to be saying. So it was just the circumstance of me training her, combined with the fact that working that job did also kind of treat my social anxiety a little bit just by the nature of the work. I think that is how I was able to initially feel more comfortable around her than I usually would. Then by the end of that first day where I was training her, she was just very, not even friendly, I guess, but she was joking around with me a lot. Basically, it was like she was treating me like we were friends. And so I guess you could say that she was being friendly in that sense. But that just made me feel more comfortable. I can't think of any specific examples, but I remember she would kind of tease me, like give me a hard time about something, but in a way where, she's obviously just joking. And I don't know, just starting from that day and continuing after that until the point she quit pretty much, we were basically best friends at work. She would come up to me at random times and start talking to me. A lot of times, I did wonder if she actually liked me, like romantically. And looking back, I think she did, at least for a while. But, of course, I never did anything about it. And maybe it was just all in my head, because she did act like that sort of with most people, like joking around a lot and everything. But it definitely felt different with me. It just felt like it was more with me than it was with anyone else. But I also wonder if that was just because I was the only other person there that was close to the same age as her. everyone else was at least a few years older. But like, okay, so one example, she came up to me one time and she was like, "Hey, loser maxing, do you like my palm tree?" And I was like, what? And then she pulled down her waistband and showed me a palm tree shaped tan line on her hip. I guess she had put a sticker on her hip or something when she was tanning. But it was very, you know, it felt kinda sexual. Like, it was a part of her body that you would only be able to see if she was wearing a bikini or something. And she just randomly showed me and asked me if I liked it. And I don't even remember what I said about that, but yeah. And she would do things like, sometimes it felt like she was just trying to find a reason to touch me. Like, she would do that thing where you tap someone's shoulder from the opposite side, then, you try to get them to look the wrong way. Or there was this thing at the ice cream cooler that was like a little trickle of water that was always going, and that's where we kept the ice cream scoop. So it would be easier to scoop the ice cream, because sometimes the ice cream would be like frozen hard. Well, I remember she put her hand in that trickle of water to get her hand wet, and then she rubbed my chest. So she was doing a thing like, haha, now your shirt's wet. But the way she rubbed my chest just felt very sensual, because she could have just splashed the water on me. So it seemed like she was intentionally touching me. And she also did the thing where she bumped my shoulder as she walked by me sometimes, like a jokey kind of fake tough guy thing. Like, we'd be walking past each other and she'd shoulder bump me and she'd be like, "Hey, watch it, punk," or something like that. And I did joke around with her too, kind of similar sort of things as what she did. Like, when she rubbed the water on my shirt, I splashed water at her the next time that I washed my hands. I took her hat off her head and put it on a shelf where she couldn't reach. Just little things like that. So I think maybe she was flirting with me. And I know I definitely had a huge crush on her. But as you might guess, this story does have a horrible ending, by the way. Like, it was bad, but we'll get to that soon. So the other guy I mentioned, the probably about 30-year-old bald guy, he was all right for the most part, I guess. He was average at the actual job, and he was nice to me, but he was obsessed with this girl. Like, he would openly talk to me about how hot she is and how much he wants to hit that. He would always be trying to jester max for her in the dumbest ways. Like, I remember he would make dumb faces at her trying to get her to laugh, which she did not laugh at ever from what I saw. Like, not even a pity laugh. She just looked at him like he's retarded, which, I mean, he kind of was for that. And this guy also injected some kind of tanning stuff, Melanotan, I think that's what it's called, which I'm pretty sure looks maxers love that stuff too, but I honestly just don't get it. Maybe if you're ginger, then that might be your only option, but this guy wasn't ginger, so, I'm thinking, why not just go outside for 30 minutes every other day? Just actually get a tan. He did get a tan from the stuff, but it just seems crazy to me to be injecting some weird, legally dubious substance you bought off the internet when you can literally just go outside to get the same result. I'm sure it might take longer to do it the natural way, but, I don't think injecting melanotan is a better solution. But yeah, so he did that, and he also supposedly was getting really into weightlifting, because I had actually already been kinda jacked already since before I even started working there. But I guess you couldn't tell because of how the work shirts for that place fit. They were really big and loose, at least. I mean, I think I was wearing a size too large for me at the time. But I remember this guy would come in every day, and he'd be telling me about his new PRs, which, good for him. That is good that he was working out, but he would try to get me to go to the gym with him, but he wanted to show me how to lift. He was like, bro, we got to get you on some creatine. We got to get you on some whey protein. If you follow my workout program, I guarantee with your frame, you could be benching 200 pounds within 6 months. And I think I was just like, nah, that's okay. I'm good. I didn't even bother to tell him. I could already bench I think I was doing 3 sets of 5 with 245 back then. So my max probably would have been about 300 pounds, I think. But yeah, I didn't want to embarrass him, so I just didn't even tell him that. Another little side anecdote about this guy. So there was this one schizo manager we would work with a lot. She was literally schizophrenic, I think, because she definitely had paranoid delusions. Like, she would always be asking, like, do you see that car that just pulled in the parking lot? Do you think they're watching me? And she was always worried that the corporate higher-ups in the company were sending spies to keep tabs on her. Because almost every day, multiple times per day, she would be like, do you think that guy works for Jeff? You don't think Jeff sent him to watch me, do you? Like, she was definitely delusional. And I guess she used to be a nurse, like the type of nurse that helps elderly people at their own homes. But she got fired from that job for stealing patients' medicine. She said that she got fired for having a bad credit score, but I heard from the general manager, or I overheard the general manager telling someone else that it was because she stole patients' medication. So, this is the type of person that ends up working in fast food. It's literally just a last resort for society's most desperate rejects. But yeah, so one day I was working with Beth, that's the schizo lady, and Jim, that's the melanotan guy. And Jim told me, dude, I saw Beth at Walmart last night. I'm pretty sure she was on meth, and she was buying a bunch of, I forget what the stuff's called. I don't feel like looking it up. But he said she was buying the stuff that people use as an ingredient to make meth. They sell it as some kind of over-the-counter allergy medicine or something, I think. So yeah, whatever that's called, he told me that she was buying a bunch of that. And then a couple hours later, Beth came up to me and she told me, hey, I ran into Jim at Walmart last night and he was acting really funny. You know what I mean? He was high as a kite. I don't know what he was on, but it must have been something strong. So both of them were accusing the other one of being high in public. So I just assumed they're both right. But I thought it was pretty funny that they would both try to slander the other one in private when really they were probably both on drugs. But yeah, that was just a little side anecdote. That's neither here nor there. But like I was saying, this guy, Jim, he was in love with Ashley. He would always be trying just to be around her. And literally every time I worked with both of them, I would see him ask her to hang out. And every time she would always just be like, I'm busy. I mean, she was actually nice to him for the most part, from what I could see. But she did tell me one time that he creeped her out. And she showed me a text message he sent her. And the message just said, I like your ass. And it had a winky face. And she said she told him that that was messed up. And he tried to act like, no, I mean, I just think you're cool. Like I like you as a friend, I like your ass, That was how he tried to explain it. But she obviously wasn't buying it. I mean, who knows? Maybe he did mean it like that, but I doubt it because this guy also personally told me multiple times how nice he thinks her ass is. So, I'm pretty sure he just meant it literally. But yeah, she was nice to the guy at work, probably because he would give her weed all the time. Like she would just ask him for weed and he would call a guy to bring it to him. and then he just immediately handed over to her. And he was just giving it to her. She was not paying him at all. And I remember one time he was talking to me about how ripped he was getting. He did lose some weight as he was working out, but honestly, it didn't really move the needle at all. But yeah, he said something along the lines of, bro, at the rate I'm going to have a six-pack soon, and I'm going to make some reason to, accidentally get caught with my shirt off, wink, wink, by Ashley. And she's just going to be like, what? That's how delusional this guy was. It's funny because I also had one-itis for Ashley at the time, but Jim was just on another level. He did not care who knew it. And just the delusion of, when she sees me with my six-pack abs, she's not going to be able to resist. As if his abs are suddenly going to make him less of a sub-5 bald loser. He was literally fully bald and 30 years old, living with his mom, working minimum wage, fast food. There is no way that this 17-year-old girl would ever be interested in him. If you're at the point in your life where you're such a loser, you have so little to lose that you think it's a good idea to be injecting strange internet chemicals into your veins just to get a little bit of a tan, and you think that's going to help you finally get some, I mean, what do you even say to someone like that? To this day, that's what I imagine the average follower of the Red Pill is like. Just a lifelong 30-year-old loser, working at the slop factory, obsessed with some teenage girl, just doing whatever he can, deluding himself into thinking he can look-smacks his way into her heart. It's delusional. That's really all you can say. But yeah, so the closest I ever got to actually getting something going with this girl, like I said, we would pretty much flirt with each other at work all the time, although I was always kind of unsure about if that's actually what was going on, because she did have that kind of personality where she would always be joking around with pretty much everybody. But it just seemed like it was more with me, and I never really saw her being physical with anyone else other than me. So I do think she liked me, at least for a while. And the sort of culminating moment in all of this, I don't know if that even made sense grammatically, but whatever. This is what happened. So for a while I was working there, I didn't have a car. So usually my mom or my dad would drive me to and from work. I was always able to get a ride to work, but I did have to walk home sometimes, which really sucked because it was only like a 5-minute drive, but it was all highway. So if you were walking, it took at least an hour, probably more like an hour and a half. Because I remember getting off around 11:15 p.m. and then walking home, and it was almost 1 a.m. by the time I got there. So that sucked. Plus, I had holes in my shoes because they wouldn't provide us with shoes for the job, but we did have to have these specific type of black non-slip kind of restaurant shoes. So I would just buy the cheapest ones you could get at Target. They were like $30, I think. And then I would wear them until they were literally falling apart. So I had to walk home in these just dilapidated shoes. I remember one of them got to the point where the top part was separating from the sole. So every time I took a step, it was like flopping on the ground at the toe part. So it was basically like wearing backwards flip-flops. And that happened while I was at work one day. And then I had to walk all the way home like that after work. And the entire walk was along the side of the highway. There was no sidewalks or anything like that. And for maybe like a third of the distance, once I got closer to my neighborhood, kind of outside the little town area where the restaurant was, it was just a big ditch on both sides of the road, then woods on the other side of the ditch. So the only option was either walk on the highway or walk in the ditch. And at that part of the highway, it was just one lane in each direction, and there was not much of a shoulder. So, you know, luckily it was never raining or anything when I had to walk home. And it was always at night, like later than 10 p.m., because that's the earliest I would usually get off. So there wasn't a lot of traffic. What I would do was I would usually walk on the road until I saw a car coming, and then I would go into the ditch until it passed. But yeah, obviously, it was not ideal. It was a pretty bad time, especially after working a 10 or 11-hour shift on my feet all day. And then I got to walk home in my fucked up shoes along the side of the freaking highway. It was bad. But I probably only had to walk home a total of like 10 times, I'm guessing, something like that. So it wasn't that bad. Usually one of my parents could give me a ride, and I did eventually get a car that I could use. So after that, I had my own reliable transportation. But yeah, so one day I worked with Ashley, and she got off a couple of hours before closing. Then I got off at closing. So she got off a couple hours before me. And I remember all day that day, she was just flirting with me more than usual. And I was flirting back, if that's what it was. From my end, that's what it was, because I definitely had a crush on her, but I don't know necessarily about her intentions. But after she got off, she clocked out, but she didn't leave immediately. She just stood at the counter and she kept talking to me. And I felt like, it was just one of those rare times in my life where, just because of the specific circumstances, like I already mentioned, I actually felt pretty comfortable with her, enough that I could actually just kind of chat with her and have a nice conversation, maybe actually flirt a little bit. So I remember I was wondering why she just stayed there talking to me for so long when she could easily just get in her truck and go home, but I wasn't questioning it. So I had the idea to ask her if she could give me a ride home later, and she said she could. So eventually she left, and then a couple hours later, I got off work, and she was there waiting for me in the parking lot. And I remember she had changed out of her work clothes. It was the first time I had ever seen her in her regular clothes, and she looked nice. I mean, she wasn't dressed up or anything. She was just wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but just seeing her with her hair down and no hat, I thought she looked really good. But yeah, so she drove me home, and she was telling me how her dad built half the houses in my neighborhood. I don't know if she was actually like rich or anything, but she did always talk about her horses, and I guess her dad owned a construction company or something. So they probably had some money. But I do wonder about her family dynamic, what her home life was like, because she also mentioned that her older sister, who I think was like early 20s, she was a stripper, I guess, but she still lived at home with their parents. So either her parents were okay with that, or I guess maybe they weren't necessarily okay with it, but they didn't kick her out or anything. But yeah, so, I guess that's neither here nor there, but yeah, she drove me home. And when we got there, we were sort of in the middle of conversation when we pulled in the driveway, and she just kept talking. So we just sat there talking for a while. I didn't get out and go inside immediately. So we were sitting there talking in my driveway, and I remember she told me, she said it kind of like, "I have some weed, by the way, but I'm kind of afraid to smoke it because it's supposed to be really strong." And I was just like, cool. Because, oh yeah, before that, when we first pulled up to my house, she asked me if anyone was home, and I said no, because, neither of my parents were home. So yeah, basically at the time, I just thought she was asking because when she saw the house, it looked like no one was home. She was just asking out of curiosity, I guess, is what I thought. But thinking about it afterwards, she had asked me if anyone was home, and then she mentioned she had some weed. Looking back, and I mean, like literally within an hour of her leaving, I started to question, wait, did she want to come in and smoke with me? Because the way she said she had the weed, but she was afraid to smoke it, like it makes me think maybe she wanted me to be like, oh, don't worry about it. Come in, hang out. I'll take care of you. You know, that's kind of what it seemed like. But at the time when she said that, I was just like, okay, I'm sure you'll probably be fine. And it was literally right after that, too. Like, she just kind of stopped talking. And then I was like, well, thanks for the ride. See you later. And I got out of her truck and I went in the house. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to make a move there. I didn't even go freeze cell mode exactly. You know, I didn't freeze. I just retardedly did not realize what was happening in the moment. Although I'm still not 100% sure. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I could have probably hooked up with this girl on that night if I had not been as retarded as I am. And she was legitimately like at least a 7 out of 10. I mean, I would probably say 8 out of 10 or at least 7.5. Although, really, the way I see it, there's only 3 categories. There's category 1, I definitely would not boink. Category 2, I would boink but wouldn't really be proud of it. And there's category 3, which this girl was in, which is I would absolutely, in a heartbeat, boink her brains out very enthusiastically, and I'd also probably give up everything to lock her down for life. By the way, she was 18 by the time this happened, so all you little legal scholars out there freaking out like, but weren't you 20 years old at the time? Oh my God, you're a PDF. Okay, she was 18 at the time, and I was like 2.5 years older than her, okay? I shouldn't even have to say this, but I already know some of y'all, especially the Zoomers, y'all act like you freaking worship the law. Like anyone that even looks at a girl that's like 1 hour under 18 is a literal PDF. But yeah. Then after that, I actually didn't work with Ashley for like 2 weeks after that. We were supposed to work together literally the next day. I remember that, but she called in sick. When we finally did work together again, it just felt like all the spark was gone. She didn't like ignore me or anything, but she just wasn't like, she just didn't find little reasons to touch me anymore. She didn't act all playful and everything with me anymore. And the final nail in the coffin, the thing about it that hurts the most, so this one guy started working there maybe a month or 2 after that. It was this 24-year-old black guy that I guess he was still hoping to make it to the NFL. He never even went to college, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think he had a very good chance of making it to the NFL, but he did try out for an arena football team at some point. So I guess he was just trying to go pro however he could. He was a wide receiver, by the way. He did not physically look like he could be an NFL player, but, you know, I guess wide receivers aren't usually really that jacked anyways, so I don't know. But he didn't make the arena football team, by the way, so he probably wasn't actually that good. But yeah, I only worked with the guy 2 times, I think. He usually worked the sort of middle shift, and I worked the late shift, so I just wouldn't see him that much. But I didn't like him just because the first time I worked with him, we were supposed to be cleaning the walls in the kitchen. It was like our special cleaning task for the week. So I went and told him, we got to clean the walls, because he was pretty new at the time, and I don't think he even knew about the special cleaning tasks. It was like a chart we had on the wall where I think it was every Tuesday and Thursday, whoever was working would have these special cleaning tasks assigned. So I checked the chart and I saw what we were supposed to do, cleaning the walls. So I went up to him and told him about it. I told him we have to wipe the walls down, and he was like, I don't wipe walls. So I just said, what? Because I was hoping I misheard him, but he just said it again. I don't wipe walls. So I just said, okay. And I started to walk away. And then he was like, I'm just playing, bro. Let's wipe these walls down. So I guess he was just joking, but just in case anyone listening to this is someone that jokes like that genre of joke is never funny. Like, the whole joke is you're just being an asshole, and then you're saying, oh, just kidding. But you were still an asshole, okay? Saying just kidding does not negate the fact that you were being a jerk. Like, the only source of humor there could possibly be in that is the suffering of the person being joked at. So it's not funny. Only an absolute douchebag would think that that's funny. Here's another example. I had to fly somewhere for work one time. Obviously not at the slop factory. This was an actual professional job as an engineer. I had to fly somewhere for work, and I lost my boarding pass. Or actually, I think I was flying home from the place, from the work trip, and I just wasn't able to print off my boarding pass. It was something like that. Anyways, I had to print a boarding pass, or I had to get a boarding pass at the airport. So I asked a random worker at the airport if he knew where I could print a boarding pass, and he just immediately goes, no. Like he basically shouted it. And then I just said, okay, and I started to walk off. And then he was like, haha, just kidding. You can find the kiosks over there. Like, how is that funny? You're just being a dick. The whole joke is that you're being a dick. And you just want to see how a person reacts to someone being an asshole to them. That's the humor in that, I guess. But yeah, so I did not like the football guy, but the reason I even mentioned him in the first place, so I went into work one day, and that guy was there, and Ashley was there. They were both working the shift before me, so there was like a half-hour overlap where we were all there. And they were both flirting with each other, like hardcore. It was a lot like how she used to be with me, but even more, like way even more. Like, I remember at some point he picked her up and put her in the ice machine. And the whole time she was just giggling and kicking her legs like, ha ha ha, no, put me down, put me down. Like, she was loving it. Honestly, from what I saw, I would be surprised if they didn't end up hooking up after that. Like, it was just, it was hard to see. It was hard for me to see that. And I can't even hate the guy for that, but I sure as hell would have loved to live the rest of my life without ever seeing that. And on top of that, I had to clean the fucking ice machine too. Because obviously it's disgusting for a person to be all up in the ice like that with her dirty shoes and everything. And I had to be the one to clean it because they both got off work right after that. And I guess the manager didn't think to tell either of them that, they had to stay a little bit late to clean up the mess they made. And the ice machine is really not that easy to clean either. You have to unplug it and wait for it to melt enough so you can even scoop all the ice out because there's a lot of ice stuck along the walls of it, which it took a couple hours at least for it to just defrost. And it's a really big thing that's really deep. I'm pretty tall and it was hard for me to even reach all the crevices and everything. And then, of course, since the ice machine was unplugged and all of the ice was contaminated, we very quickly ran out of ice in the dining room and at the drive-thru. So all the customers were complaining they didn't have any ice. And then even after cleaning it, it takes hours to produce enough ice where we can replenish the soda machines. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much got cucked with that one. He stole my girl, and I had to deal with everything with the ice machine. But I mean, he didn't really steal her from me. I had my chance before that. It's really my own fault I didn't capitalize on it, but it's just, I mean, even thinking about it now, this was, I want to say off the top of my head, well, it had to have been like 16, 17 years ago. To this day, it hurts to think about seeing them flirting with each other. And of course, I was there too. And while I was seeing them flirt with each other, obviously I was there, I was seeing it, but she was basically, she didn't say anything to me. She was all, it was just her and him, and they were all focused on each other. Like, it's just, I don't think I need to say any more about it. I think you understand, you get the point. And this is why I deserve to be a sub 5. Honestly, I think I deserve it because I have had chances in my life. I know a lot of you have not had chances like that. So it's like, if anyone deserves this fate, it's me. Like, there was a girl back in high school that just straight up told me she wanted to F my brains out, and I didn't even do anything about that. And obviously, I completely balked with single mother. That should have been a sure thing. But whatever, I meant for this video to actually be mostly just about how it was in general, working with attractive young females in that minimum wage environment. I didn't mean to talk for that long just about the one girl, but, well, okay, let's get into it. So Ashley was the first attractive girl that worked there, and she quit pretty soon after the ice machine incident, by the way. But after her, they hired a lot more of them. At one point, there was 4 different attractive young females that all worked there, and it was just really eye-opening to see how life was for them compared to my own life. Like, they would actually get tips. We were not officially supposed to accept tips, but, obviously nobody's going to turn down free money. But I remember one girl I worked with, I liked her. She was actually a really good worker, but in one single shift one time, she made like $20 in tips, which isn't a lot of money, I know, but who tips fast food workers? I literally never even got one tip in the entire 4 years I worked there. But these girls would get tips all the time. Or I don't know if it was really all the time, but it happened a lot more often than you would expect. Dudes would just hand them cash through the drive-through window. It was insane. Some old guy one time he gave me a $5 bill and he told me to give it to the girl I was working with. And I'm just thinking like, dude, she literally just handed you your drink. I did most of the work. But I didn't say that, obviously. I just gave her the money. And one thing that would happen all the time, like multiple times per day, every single time I worked with one of these young, attractive females, when they would be taking orders and they'd go, "All right, would you like anything else?" So many men, especially middle-aged and older men, would say something like, "Yeah, I'd like to take you home with me," or some variation of that. It literally happened all the time. Just such a fucking simp statement. Because obviously they know that's never going to work. So what's even the point? Why do you want to increase these girls' egos even more? They're already living life like royalty. They wouldn't even have to do all their daily tasks a lot of the time because simp coworkers would just do it for them. Like the guy I mentioned before, Jim, the guy that was obsessed with Ashley, he would always take the trash out for her and things like that. He would like fill up the ice machine, the ice receptacles in the soda machines, just things that she was supposed to do. He would always just do it for her. It's just pathetic. I never did shit like that. That's one thing I have to be proud of. I never stooped that low. I did not let any of these girls take advantage of me. Although, I don't even blame the girls for it when these simps were begging them to let them do their jobs for them. I would probably let someone do my job for me too if they really insisted. You might as well. But yeah, the one girl I mentioned, the one that got $20 in tips one day, one of the reasons I liked her was because she actually would refuse to let anyone do her job for her. She would also help us stock shelves on days when the truck would come, because usually it was just a given. The men were the ones that would put the boxes up, and the females just didn't have to do that. I always thought it was BS that any female working in the same exact position as me, like same job title and everything, she just wouldn't have to stock, while I would. And some of the boxes were probably too heavy for the average woman. I understand that. Like the boxes with the soda syrup, for example, they were probably like 50 pounds. But most of it was just like paper cups and bags and little dipping cups, like the little plastic things. Most of the boxes weren't that heavy. The ladies were capable of helping out. They just weren't expected to, so they didn't have to. But yeah, the one girl actually would help, and nobody even told her to. She just wanted to. She offered to. So she was pretty cool. She was a hard worker. I liked her. But holy shit, the amount of simpery that would go on around this girl. Like, she was attractive, but it was in a way that, like, even me at the time, I wasn't that much older than she was. I was probably like 21, 22, 23 while she worked there. But she was 16 when she started, but she looked even younger than that. So she was cute in a cute kid sort of way. I didn't really see her like, oh, she's so hot, she's so beautiful, or anything like that. She just, she looked very young, and she acted very childish too. So I just didn't really view her that way. But I was definitely in the minority with that, because just the way she got treated, it was seriously crazy. I mean, I know most of y'all already know how it is, how attractive girls get treated like goddesses, but it was surprising to me with how young she looked, and she actually was pretty young. She was 16 when she started, but just the way that men would very openly hit on her all the time. I saw probably at least a dozen times guys just asked her for her number while they were ordering their food. And these were men ranging anywhere from actually being around her same age to being so old they literally had gray hair. But the craziest thing I saw with this girl, so occasionally we would have the chain gang come through, or the road crew, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was like the prisoners that would get to go out and work on the sides of the highway. I guess they just picked up trash, I think. I'm not really sure what they did. But I'm sure you've seen them if you live somewhere where they do that. I don't know if they do that in every state. But yeah, it would usually be like one cop or corrections officer, whatever he is, and then he'd have like 4 or 5 prisoners with him. They'd all be wearing their orange jumpsuits, and they weren't handcuffed or anything. I think they have to have a long record of good behavior before they're even allowed to be on the road crew. But yeah, they're not restrained in any way. But yeah, it was usually just like 5 of them at most, and they would usually just go through the drive-thru, and the cop would order all their food for them. Well, this one day, I was working with that 16-year-old girl that looked really young, and the prisoners came in, but this time there was a lot of them. It was like a little bus they came in. So it was like 15 prisoners and 1 cop, and they came inside, and this girl was working the register, and I was just kind of standing there next to her so I could listen to each order as they came and help out by handing them their cups, or making any milkshakes that got ordered, or dropping fries in the grease, or anything like that. because when you have that many people ordering at the same time like that, it gets really hectic. It gets kind of confusing if you have to wait for each order to pop up on the screen in the back. So, yeah, basically all that's just to say I was standing right there next to her as they ordered. And also, call me a white knight, but I was a little bit on guard just because it was a whole lot of orange jumpsuits in the building and only one officer. But yeah, I would say more than half of these prisoners made some kind of comments to her, like the classic, when she asks anything else, and they'd be like, "Can I have you?" Or they'd ask her if she would come visit them sometime. I remember one of them told her the exact date he's getting out. He was like, "Listen, I get out on October the 11th, and I would love to take you out sometime." Like, they were all doing it. One guy was even like, "Before I order, I just want you to know, I think you are the sexiest little thing I have ever seen in my entire life." And throughout all of this, she just kept being like, "No thanks. Thank you. I'm not interested." She was being nice about it. Even, well, after the guy that said the thing about her being the sexiest little thing or whatever he said, I told her, "Hey, do you want me to take over here? I don't mind. I can take these orders." I said something to her like that because it was making me uncomfortable. Call me a white knight if you want, but it was just a little too much, I think. But I don't know if she just didn't mind or maybe she even liked the attention. I really don't know. But she did not want me to take over for her. And then after all the food was done, these guys all stayed and they ate inside. And I don't think most slop factories do this, but at this place, when customers ate inside, we would actually carry their food out to the table for them, kind of like a waiter. So I also told her that I would carry all the food out so she wouldn't have to be subjected to any more harassment. Because I can't remember everything these guys were saying, but some of it definitely went beyond just hitting on her. At least 2 or 3 of them, they made outright sexual comments. I would call it harassment, but she insisted on taking the orders out to the tables. I did take like half the orders out because it was just a lot of orders. But yeah, while she was bringing the food out, all of these guys were just openly ogling her. They're staring at her ass when she walks by, making comments as she walked past. One guy tried to get her to sit down and hang out with them while they ate. And, I get it to some extent. I can understand looking. These guys have been locked away from all women for who knows how long. They're obviously going to check her out, but I mean, none of it surprised me, I guess. The only thing that actually surprised me a little bit was that she wouldn't let me just carry all the food out and everything. But she was like that, where she did always insist on doing her job. Like I already said, this was the one girl in the entire place that would actually help stock when the truck came. So I think that's why. But she was getting harassed. So I don't know. But whatever. I have looked these girls up, by the way, in recent years just to see what they've been up to. So the girl that was there when all the prisoners came in, she currently works at a local manufacturing plant, and she now has a full tattoo sleeve. It's very ugly. Like, even if you like tattoos, it's poorly done. But she has not gotten fat. She still looks okay, I guess. She's definitely aged, but she doesn't look horrible. It doesn't look like she ever got married, and she does not have any kids, from what I can see. This is just based on her Facebook, by the way. But yeah, I'm surprised she never got married. But I guess she's doing all right. As for Ashley, the girl that I had a big crush on, that I actually had a chance with, She also did not get fat, and it appears she's also never had kids, but she did get married. It looks like she is currently divorced. She got all her hair cut off, apparently, and she also got a bunch of tattoos. She's not looking too great, unfortunately. I don't know why she would cut her hair. Like, she would probably still look pretty good if she grew her hair out, but it's not just like a short girl. Like, it's not feminine at all. She has a very butch kind of haircut in her most recent photos. But she is in a relationship with a man currently, it says on Facebook. So, I don't know. I don't really know what to think. I don't know what's up with that. But I guess I'll end this one here. I might make another video in this series because there are some more interesting characters I met throughout my time working there. I did want to tell the story about this other NEET I worked with for a little bit, but I also have some other videos I've been wanting to make, so I might hold off on any more tales from the slop factory, at least for a little bit. So please check out my other slop factory videos if you missed those, or watch some of my other videos. I'm kind of prolific at this point. I think I've made over 200 videos, so there's a lot to choose from. And please subscribe. I'm getting pretty close to 10,000 subscribers, so that's cool. Like, that's a big milestone. But yeah, thank you for watching.